Welcome, everyone. We're going to give everyone a minute to flow in here. This is the first ever official REM Mastermind session. So we're pretty excited for this. So while we're kind of getting everyone to flow in, um, use the chat. Let us know where you're from, what your brokerage you're with. We're going to kind of do a quick intro and then go through, but just so you know how it's going to work, I have questions lined up. We've things we're going to talk about today. And then what we'd like to do is also take questions from you. Now, there's the chat and the Q&A option. Ideally, if you have a specific question for people, please put it in the Q&A section. That's easier for me to monitor because the chats can sometimes move pretty fast. So I might not be able to monitor the questions over in chat. I'll kind of monitor questions, like I might save some to the end if something makes sense based on the current conversation to kind of interrupt and bring it in. We'll bring it in at that time. But to be honest, I'm just going to use my judgment and decide, is that going to be in the moment or save that for the end? And we'll kind of take it from there. But I know we're just waiting on Peggy to join us as well. She was at a conference today, so maybe she's having a little trouble connecting. But hopefully we can get her in here soon. But we're going to jump in and start anyways. And if anyone again has questions, and then a big thank you to Remax. They sponsored REM Mastermind for the entire year. So they're our official sponsor here. And hey, Peggy, welcome. So we are going to jump in. So I'm going to introduce you quickly to all of our Mastermind panelists for this day. And I'm actually really excited because one of the things we want to do with this, because this is a thing, and all of you would know this in the industry, we want to bring in people that we know are actually doing the business when we're talking about it. So one of the things we ask with people when they join is, can we share your production data so you guys know who they are? So we're going to kind of go around here. So we have Sandra Pike from Halifax with Royal LePage Atlantic. And last year, Sandra did 101 transactions, which I believe about 60% were listings. And then we also have Alex Hripko from Calgary with Royal LePage Benchmark, and their team did 119 transactions with about 50% of those were listings last year. And then we have Tony Johal, Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo. I saw Kitchener, but then I was like, kind of all of them. And he did 259 transactions last year, with 50% of those being listings. And then we have Peggy Hill, Barrie, Simcoe area with Remax Hallmark, who did about 700 transactions last year, and 376 of those were listings. That's what's on MLS. There might have been a few off-market deals in there as well. But I really want to say thank you to all of you for joining in. So thank you. This is going to be fun. So the first one that I want to jump into now is relatively an easy question. I'm going to start with Sandra's. Basically, with kind of like the shift in the market, how have you like seen, like what's been the biggest adjustment you've had to make with the market changing?
Well, the market that we're in now and what you're experiencing there is what we've always had here, except for 2 years of COVID. Like when I joined back 15 years ago, we had 18 months of inventory. This is truly normal for us, but I would say the obstacle that probably everybody is facing is getting sellers to realize, hey, we're not in COVID anymore, and houses aren't moving as quickly as they used to. And I like to call it the Cinderella market, that if it's not the perfect fit when they're going in, they're gone.
Go to the office a month.
How about you, Alex?
Yeah, so I mean, similar thing where our market was, we are actually experiencing a really strong sellers market for quite a while. And then last year, about mid-year, that's when we started to see that shift into more of that balanced and transitioning market. And we are still experiencing that transition. And the question is, how do we get the sellers to understand that it's not as strong for them anymore, but buyers feel that they have so much leverage and are able to negotiate down? Now, that's a really interesting question to kind of pose. And, how do you explain that to each of these potential clientele? But, we are working with what we got. We're making it work.
It's really all you can do at this point. Like, Tony, I know in the pre-call you had a lot to say on this as well, just like kind of the things you've learned from this transition to homes not selling as quick.
Andrew's just on a call right now.
I mean, really what we're finding in Kitchener, Waterloo region in general, kind of out this way, and maybe in Ontario, pandemic, so to speak. But I mean, it really is we are finding it to be pretty much a buyer's market at this point. Buyers do have choices, they have options. They are negotiating offers, they are getting offers accepted with conditions. And we are seeing, the buyer, subject to the sale of their home condition getting put into the SBP. So we are seeing a lot of those. I mean, we sold a few homes over the past few weeks, and every single one of them were SBP. And the backup properties, like we had the listing, the backup properties just sat for all of December. Then all of a sudden, the first couple of weeks in January, they're getting offers, they're removing their conditions. So I feel like we are at least where we are gonna get into a higher activity market than what we came out of last quarter. Going into this current quarter, we're probably going to get more activity, but whether that's reflective in pricing remains to be seen. But right now, I'd say it's probably a 50-50 balanced market, maybe swaying slightly towards a buyer's market.
Curious, like how many are like of the deals you're getting are on the like the SPPs on them? Like, is that most listings now people are asking for that, or is it still a relatively small percentage?
Honestly, it's really going to be price dependent. If we've got a 1.2, $1.3 million property, it's very unlikely it's going to be a first time home buyer. So the chances are the buyer is going to have a condition in there because for us, 1.2 million is a relatively high price point. Our average in the area is about 700, 800,000. So once you kind of get to a certain price point, yes, you're going to see SBPs being put in there. But I mean, what I can say is this, like, let's just say out of 100 properties or 100 listings, for example, if we're going to get an offer on it, probably 80, 85 of them are going to have conditions, financing and inspection, and maybe only a few of them are going to be firm unless they're going to get it pushed into that bidding war status.
And how about you, Peggy? Like, what have you had to like look at as the big difference in your business since the market shifted?
Well, we benefited a lot from COVID. So when COVID ended, so going forward, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, we definitely are now in a full buyer's market. I can't say that we are at all in a seller's market. Most areas in Simcoe County are between, I would say, 5 and up to 18 months of inventory. So we've shifted hard. And I think we spend most of the time just, I think in my role on the team, like I spend a lot of time with my agents and their mental health because we're kind of absorbing everything from the consumer because they're coming at us. They don't want to listen. They don't want to drop their prices. They don't want to talk about it. And then they're evil to my agents. So, we're just absorbing it all. So for me, I think my biggest role and responsibility is to, just talk my agents through what the scenarios are. We role play all the time, but we are in a downshifting market. And not only have most of my agents not seen this market, most of the sellers that are in this market have never been in this position. So we're all learning at the same time. I've been in this career for about 23 years, and I can honestly tell you, outside of a couple of blips, I've never seen this market. So it's really tough. So we're all learning. And every time I hire a new agent, I'm like, well, yeah, but as much experience as the rest of us at this point, because none of us have worked in this. So I think it's a lot of conversations with our sellers and with our agents.
I'm curious, and we'll get everyone to answer this as well. So like with the change in how sellers are, like how are you, like when are you starting now to look at setting the tone for like so they expect what's happening? Because I'm sure a lot of people, their expectation, especially in the GTA and Southern Ontario in general, was like, all right, 7 to 10 days, the market's going to sell no matter what. Probably get over asking. Now it could be sitting for like what's depending on what your average days on market, it could be a while they're there. Like when are you starting to set that expectation for people, and how are you going about that?
Me?
Yeah.
So obviously we have these conversations and price. I don't know that there's anything more important than pricing right now. I don't know that, you know, we used to rely heavily on the staging, and we still do. We stage all the properties. We photograph obviously professionally. I don't know if all that matters anymore. What matters right now is price. And if we can't get that price nailed down, we're done. We're done. Like, and the problem is if you don't have these conversations in the beginning and you don't set the expectation, then they're not going to listen. Like, don't come to them in 21 days. You got to tell them on the day of the listing appointment, we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to keep talking about, where we sit and how we compare. Solds don't even matter anymore. It's what we have in front of us. Like, why would they buy us if not someone else? So almost immediately do we talk about price drops in this market.
And like Sandra, you've been dealing with like this for years because Halifax had a lot longer days on market. Like, have you found how people are now with this different, or like have you had to change how you done it, or has it always been kind of the same conversations you've had to had over the years?
Peggy, it's funny that you mentioned, staging and those things don't matter anymore. And I believe content doesn't matter anymore. Because as cute as anybody can be on Instagram, you still need to get it across to home plate. And I have shifted, I would say, probably when COVID started, I became more of someone who talks about stats. When I go in to see a seller, like I tell them, I could sell your house in a day, a week, or a year. I have no idea. And I talk to my sellers each and every week. This is the amount of homes that are listed. This is what's selling. These are the terminations that we had. This is the amount of price drops that are happened every week. My sellers are hearing about that. And I think a mistake that we've been making here in our market is that you look at what's listed and what's sold. So as an example, if 400 homes listed in the month of December and 375 sold, that's a really great stat. But if you actually look at the market, oh wow, when December opened up, there was actually 800 homes on the market. So now there are, 1,300 homes on the market and only 300 are selling. That's a different stat. Because my stat last year only showed that 22% of what was actually on the market sold. When if I look at, only 3,000 homes came to the market and 2,700 sold, that's totally different. So I think for real estate agents in this market, in order to have sellers who are more willing to work with you, is telling them exactly what's happening. And agents really need to understand the market and their numbers. And I do it every Monday morning. And again, looking at the terminations and how many deals are written. And that's what I think is important in our market now.
And how about you, Tony? Like, how are you setting the stage with your clients for like the reality of what the market's like now?
Well, I think first of all, we have to establish, can they even afford to sell? So one of the things that we always have to do up front is just figure out, okay, if you bought in 21 and 22, there's a good possibility your pricing is down. Is there enough equity in the house to be able to sell? And in the event that there's not, do you have money on hand somewhere else to be able to pay off, whatever you may still owe the bank plus closing costs? So that's definitely something that is fundamental. The next thing that I really try to do with my sellers, and we've already talked about it here, is setting the expectation, getting the pricing with the sellers and so on. It's not just I want to take that point just a little bit farther. We can sit there and we can give the seller the pricing. They could be in agreement to it, but the last thing that we want to do is not be clear on how the process can go. Because you may have the property listed at $799, a buyer's agent may work his ass off, bring an offer for $799, like full price. All of a sudden, the seller blindsides you as a listing agent, says, "Look, I want $820." All of a sudden, it's that there should have been a communication that should have been happened ahead of time. We need to talk to the sellers about the reality of where the pricing is at. Yes, they have to drop the COVID mindset of the pandemic pricing, list at $799, and some of them still think they're going to get $850. we have to price it properly, and they have to be prepared for perhaps going below the asking price. And if an offer comes in below, not to get offended. There's no such thing as a lowball offer. Just work every offer, because every buyer is going to come in here wanting to negotiate it. If you as an agent were a buyer, you would do the same thing. You'd come in a little bit lower, trying to get the best deal possible. No different than when the market was flipped on the seller's favor. So yeah, setting expectations up front. Can they afford to sell? Like kind of role playing what would happen if an offer comes in, and then also just kind of put the bug in their ear about, look, in the event that the home isn't getting enough showings or isn't getting the offers, we may have to look at a price reduction, and maybe having that conversation up front rather than later. So it's just about, here, this is everything. I'm just going to give it to you right now, everything that is possible. I'm going to navigate you through each part of the process as it happens. And it's just being an advisor. It's not trying to sell someone, it's just educating them. The market's speaking a language. All we're doing is translating it and giving it back to them.
And how about you, Alex? Like, how are you setting expectations with your clients?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was said with respect to being that guide and kind of being that authority where you are educating them on the marketplace. Maybe not just looking at the current market conditions, even explaining to them, okay, we were just in a seller's market and we're in this transitioning phase. What does this look like right now? Also, depending on what is their product type. Like right now in our condo market, that's pretty much tanked depending on the specific location. Versus there's still some detached homes that are experiencing multiple offers depending on the price point, etc. So really explaining what that could look like. And I also think it's important to look at the long-term and the short-term trends. And when I say that, I mean, look back to pre-COVID numbers and see how it compares to where we're at today. Like right now, I do find that we are experiencing what we were at kind of in 2019, especially in the Calgary area market, where we're seeing those inventory levels pretty high, but we're still seeing activity happen. And it's not as fast paced as the COVID time, but just being that expert, being their guide, and helping them through the process so that they do understand.
We have a question here from Ryan Godlinton. So we're going to go around to everyone with this, and we'll start with Peggy. I'm going to add one thing at the end of the question. So his question is, when taking on a new listing, do you have your client pre-sign a price reduction? I'm just going to add why or why not to your answer. We'll start with you, Peggy.
No, we don't. We certainly have the conversations. We certainly set the timeline, but we don't physically have a price change form signed. You have to remember we're still in sales, right? And until we get that listing signed, we don't have anything. So you still have to be in sales. You still have to, schmooze your sellers. Like you can't go in there and start demanding. Like that's not what this is about. You want to be realistic and you want to be honest, but to a degree as well, right? Like if you go in there and sabotage this whole thing and say, you're signing this in 21 days, this is what you're doing, it's my price, like you're not getting that listing. And there's going to be people that will tell them what they want to hear. So don't be like that. You go in there and you set reasonable expectations and you're honest about it, but you can't demand that they sign things on the spot.
How about you, Sandra? How have you done that historically?
No, never. It's yeah, I've never. I'm with you, Peggy. You're not going to get the listing.
No.
I think it's a scare tactic, and I mean we have a cancellation policy, and it's explaining that, and I can't imagine adding another layer to the business. So no.
Have you, Tony? Have you similar?
We do not, no. And the reason we don't do it is because it doesn't portray confidence.
Yeah. How about you, Alex? Are you pre-signing or not?
Sometimes. So it depends on the situation where, for example, if the seller is willing to come in at the price that we have suggested, that is the market value, then no, we don't talk about that. And it's similar to what Tony was just saying. Like it takes away that confidence of the price that we just gave and the confidence of the market. However, in cases where a seller might say, hey, I want to list slightly higher, and obviously depends on what is slightly, and that also then determines on if we're going to take the listing or not. But if it's slightly above and we're okay with that price point, then we'll say, okay, well, we'll list at your price for, say, a week or two, and then it's in the terms of the contract that it will reduce to our expected price or suggested price at X date. So then I don't need to go get that amendment signed and, kind of pull that, but it's nice to have that conversation ahead of time and kind of you're giving them that opportunity to test out their price, but kind of knowing that the first 2 weeks you're not going to get crap. So, in that 2 weeks time, that's when really the listing starts in your eyes.
We have a follow-up here for Sandra specifically. Can you tell more about the cancellation price or cancellation policy you mentioned?
So in our purchase or listing agreement, sorry, it's very ambiguous, I believe, how a seller can cancel. Back in 2014, I was meeting a lot of sellers. Actually, it was a very similar market to what we're faced with now because we had the ship start here and the market was a flurry. And then again, so what we had then is what we had now. Anyway, I was with sellers who didn't know how to break up with their agent, and I thought, oh my goodness, I never want to be that person. We pre-inspect all of our homes. We do a staging consultation for photography. It's just my hard costs that I have, and I just get them. If you want to terminate before we list, or if something happens, you're not happy with the service, or you decide not to list. I just get reimbursed for my cost. It's been great, and I've had it in place now, yeah, since 2014.
I think you're one of the first agents I've seen outside of Southern Ontario that does a pre-list inspection. It's very common. I've found in the GTA, but outside of that, it seems that very
Yeah.
few do it.
Well,
Yeah.
when you have like up to 33% of deals that are terminating, and here in Nova Scotia, well, at least in Halifax, conditions are 10 days, and I don't want the property off the market. And during COVID, we would have had 700 new agents, and I'm not talking about age group, but just any demographic. And it would have been people who've never sold homes before, people who've never been in sales before, no negotiation. And then with COVID hangovers still left over, the communication, I believe, between agents has gone down quite substantial. So I thought, okay, I just don't want my deals falling on a home inspection. I'm going to get it done. A buyer is going to sign off that they've read the home inspection. Go do your own, giddy up. But you'll come back to me 2 days prior to your conditions being due. If there's anything that you want to address, I'm done with buyers poking the bear when it comes to sellers. So I've been really strict with any offers that I'm getting in.
And there's a couple questions here that we have both in the chat and the Q&A. And just a reminder for people in the chat, if you can do it in the Q&A, it's easier for me to track. I'll still try and track the chat, but that moves faster. So it's not as easy. Basically, they're all around this idea of essentially, would you take a listing for higher than what you think it's worth right now? And
Yes.
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 Easy.
Let's get serious. Of course.
And do you have like a number? So this is like one of the questions, like if you decide market value is 800, how much higher would you put the listing up? Like 5%, 10%? Is there a number? Like, we'll start with you, Peggy, since you're jumping in pretty quick. Like, what is that number? Like, let's say a house, you think it would sell for 8, you think that's the fair value. They had a different number in mind. What's like the highest you'd be willing to list it at?
So we haven't walked away from a lot of listings. We have walked away from listings if the seller is adamant and the price is ridiculous. And to me, ridiculous would be, I don't know, if it's worth 700 and they want to list it at 1.5, I don't want my face on their lawn. But, if they want to try and they're willing to work with me and they're willing, at the end of the day, we forget as realtors, the only things on our shelves, if we were a store, listings are on our shelves. We need listings to make our phones ring. So yes, would I take an overpriced listing? Probably. Would I invest the marketing? Probably. Do I want my phone to ring? Yes. And you just never know. But at the end of the day, we do have a fiduciary duty to our seller to try and get them as much as we can. But then the problem comes in if you have a buyer and they're interested, at what point can you not properly represent that listing, in fear of the buyers ridiculously overpaying? So it's always a balance. But yes, we do take overpriced listings. We're so bad.
And then there was a follow-up, which do you feel that it affects your client's price in the long run, given buyers' perception of days on market?
So I do videos all the time with a mortgage broker, and we talk about market. And we did this one stupid video, and I basically just said, if you don't take my price now, you're probably going to get less than what I was offering to list it at, because you're going to try and reduce it to my price in 20 days. And then you're going to get nothing for another 20 days. Now we've missed more of this market. And I think we had more views on that than any other video I've ever done. And not that we get a ton of views, but for us to get 1 million views on a video, that's kind of a big deal. And you're not doing it for the views, but I think you're almost doing it as a favor to your fellow realtors. Like, people need to hear the truth. Like, we are in a declining market, and you need to be aware of that. But at the same time, I'm not going to say no to a listing. That's how I feed my kids.
And then how about everyone else? Like, did everyone else have anything they'd like to add on top of what Peggy's saying?
Yeah, I can jump on where
Sure.
like what I like to look at is what is the seller's motivation is like if they are extremely motivated but they want to list high, again, it's just kind of setting that expectation to get them back to reality. Now, in certain cases, like if especially in our upper price points, like if someone is open to having the property on the market for quite some time, then we might be more willing to accept and take on a listing that is going to take a lot more marketing, a lot more time, and a lot more money of our marketing money for that property, assuming it's going to sell ultimately. Because especially in certain price points in Calgary, it's hard to say, are we going to see that actually sell, or is it just kind of a fallacy? So it really just, for me, it really just depends on how far off are they from my market an analysis or assessment, and that's kind of how I determine on if we're going to take it or not. But similar with Peggy, like of course, like you do want to have as many listings as you can, but I also look at it in the sense of I want to have the actual serious people who are willing to transact, and I don't want to waste my time, effort, energy, and money on the people who are not willing and motivated to sell, because I'd rather put that effort into the clients who are ready to go.
And there's a couple follow-up questions here around Sandra being like reimbursed for costs if they don't. Like, basically, it's how do you have the conversation with the seller should the property not sell that they'll reimburse you for the listing costs?
So every one of our contracts are for 6 months. If they decide to cancel within those 6 months, that's when I would get reimbursed, not after the 6 months.
And then we're going to move another one. We'll start with Tony for this question. So now, like before, like listings were pretty quick that they'd move. Now they could sit even months. Like, how have you changed your communication with the sellers? Like, what's that cadence look like? How often are you communicating them? And basically, what's your communications and management strategy of your clients?
I mean, look, I mean, what it comes down to is a listing will sell eventually. And we can look at this from kind of everybody's perspective. If you take on a listing, what it eventually sells for is going to be quite different from the day that when you first listed it. And if you tell the client on day one of the listing that this is what it's eventually going to sell for, you're probably not going to get the business. And to be perfectly honest, you are going in there, you are being fair based on the comparables, the last 3 months comparables, but of course the market shifts and you have to shift with it. So I mean, for me, I try to stay in touch with my clients every single week or 2 weeks. Now, every week to the same client might be a little bit excessive, but I mean, certainly within every 2 weeks. Now, I'm talking with a client every week. If we're getting a ton of showings, but there's no offers coming, and we're getting feedback in general, I am communicating that to the client, not necessarily, as the feedback comes in, I forward it. I mean, they get it automatically through Broker Bay. But what I'm doing is I'm interpreting the feedback, and I'm giving it to them about how they can tangibly use that information effectively to reduce their price or, do whatever's needed to get their home sold. So I am in touch with my clients now more than ever. There was a time where, I would go weeks without talking to my clients, and, the market would take care of that. It would bring an offer, that type of thing. But I find now my absolute best use of time is not necessarily getting the listings. We'll always get listing calls where we are. We'll always take on lots of listings, but it's about moving them. And the best way that you can move them is continuing to be on the right side of the seller. If the seller only hears from you every time you want to reduce the price once every few weeks or once a month, they start to build up this animosity towards you where like all you're calling for is price reductions. But if all you're calling for every single week is information, naturally, they will get to the point where they're like, okay, well, maybe we need to reduce the price. So at least weekly, I'm auditing every single one of our listings. So right now, I just checked. I think we have 32, but there was a time last year where we had 72. So we had 72 listings. So I would come in, I would take an hour of my day and just kind of go through every listing. Now, not every listing needs to be audited because you may have looked at that one last week, but you may have a listing that you maybe skipped last week that you look at this week and you say, okay, what's going on with this listing? Why is it not moving? What can I do to improve this? Is it a marketing issue? Is it a pricing issue? More often than not, it's a pricing issue. And at that point, I would then rerun the comparables. I'd set up a call with my client and maybe have that conversation. And I always do it on a Wednesday. The reason I do it on a Wednesday is because if I have to make a price reduction or even a cancel and relist, which I don't like doing because it's just bullshit, to be honest. But I mean, if I have to do that, I do it on a Wednesday because that'll give me lots of time to get the listing back up on our local board, on the Toronto board, in time for the weekend showings. And the other reason why I do it on the Wednesday is because we have showings on the weekends and the offer may come Monday or Tuesday. So Wednesdays are my day for that.
And I'm Peggy, because like, especially with you, like, how many agents roughly are on your team?
57.
It's like, I'm sure for like, you probably are not personally reaching out to every client with all the listings that you
Actually,
like, or is it
I
you that's doing it?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously my agents have relationships
Yeah.
and make no doubt about it, these relationships are more important right now than they ever have been. I think if I were to give anybody any advice, because a lot of people get stuck on the perfect listing presentation, I would throw all that, like obviously we have a listing presentation, but I think the focus for people should be the connection you're making with the person across from you. And that is going to take you a lot further than worrying about the perfection of your listing presentation. But as far as the listings, once a week, I make a video for our listing clients. I give them an update as far as to, what sold that week, what our inventory is looking like. I actually track the inventory weekly and I present it to my agents and then I have it to present to our clients as well. But they get a video from me every week, aside from all the touching that their agents do with them. And then we also have client care that checks in with them. So they get lots of, and I agree with Tony, you can't be the one calling for a price reduction all the time. Like you have to have relationships with these people. You can't just be calling every 3 weeks and saying, well, it's time to drop the price again. They're going to drop you. They're not going to drop the price.
There's been a question to come up a couple of times, which fits as a nice follow-up to that, which is when essentially the different versions I've seen come through the chat and Q&A is like, what is like the right amount of time before you start discussing price reductions? Like, do you have a set time? Is it gut feel, or is there specific metrics you're looking for? But essentially, when do you start considering price adjustments?
So our market has changed so much that right now we struggle to get showings, never mind offers. So if we do take a listing and we know that it's overpriced and we are not getting any showings, you don't call a client and say, I told you so, like it's crickets. Like I would give it a couple of weeks. And if you really have no traction and you're obviously speaking to your client, I would start bringing it up at the couple of weeks. We don't have enough sales right now to be any pushier than that, because even a listing that's priced properly could in a week may not getting any showings. In fact, there's people holding listings in Simcoe County right now, and they're not even holding them so they can get the price, to get above the list price. They're just holding them because we can't get anybody to look at these houses. So we'll drop the price. At least we'll get bodies through the door. And that's what the reality of our market is looking like. There's nothing we won't do to get a showing.
And Sandra, I'm curious, going back to the kind of before the follow-up there, what your systems, like you've also been dealing a lot longer in the agents or like the houses that sit for a lot longer on the market. So you've had probably a lot longer than everyone else on like refining that system. So what's your kind of communication strategy there with your sellers from a long-term perspective?
I do two types of emails every week. One email is about the market in general, and the other follow-up is about their area, their home, and how we're doing online. Like, so I'm not going to send, hey, this is how you're doing on realtor.ca every week. And I took over a listing from another agent, and the seller called me. Why aren't you sending me what's happening on, so our back end is Paragon. And I'm like, if I sent that to you every week and you weren't getting the activity like you didn't have, I said, that would just upset you. So I'm sending you, different metrics every week about what's happening, and of course the market. So it's really having great conversations, and those hard conversations. And by the way, I am emailing everybody every Monday. It's a lot easier for me to do that and just have a different theme for every week when I'm doing the second email. So it's being engaged, and I always welcome people to call me, and I love when sellers are engaging. I have probably maybe 33% who are really engaged in what I'm doing. But Peggy, you said it, like communication when COVID, it didn't happen. We need, everybody, the cliche, go back to marketing 101. And you look at the trailblazers who would have been in the industry long before COVID, or sorry, the internet the way it is now. And it was the phone. It was communicating. And I believe we just got to get back to basics. And as silly as that sounds, it's calling and, trying to do something over text. I don't think that's the way now. And if you want to set yourself apart from other agents, you pick up the phone.
I
And
agree.
we'll go for Alex for one of the questions that came in from the audience that kind of dovetails nicely off that, which is how do you start the conversation for the price reduction? Do you do another in-person CMA, or what is the process when there's going to be a price reduction that you think is needed?
Okay, so I'm first going to start with, I guess, that question of like, I guess the question is relating to my previous answer with respect to having that into the contract, I'm assuming. But in those cases, after the listing presentation, I do a second, essentially a CMA. I actually don't meet with them again. I strictly do that via email with giving them the data, but I already provide a bunch of data to them at the listing presentation. And then we have those conversations with respect to price point, where I suggest we list, what is the unicorn price if we were able to get that. That would be a perfect scenario, and kind of go through that, and really just having that discussion and being very open and honest with where I think we should be. Now, with the cadence of communicating with my clients, that expectation is set at that listing presentation, that we will be having a detailed report sent to them every Monday. And I mean, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I am old school in that way, where I hand type out every single seller's update myself. And we go over like what are the showing activity and the feedback. We go through the views online, looking at the backside of the MLS, how many people have favorited, marked the property as a potential, so on and so forth. Even like looking at how many portals that we had last week to this week, for example, and seeing how many more buyers entered into the market for that product type, so that we can see how many more buyers are potentially serious about looking for a home like that, meaning that they have a search set up with the realtor. Even just looking at, backside of realtor.ca data and our website information, social media, and also looking specifically at the micro and macro market data surrounding that listing. Because if there's more listings that have come on and now we're priced too high in comparison to the other active listings, then we are losing the race, right? If you look at the example of, we are horses going on a race, and if you're not the top one or two even top three, you're really out of the running. You're not going to be the one that's selected from a buyer. So you really need to figure out how are you going to wow yourself when you're listing compared to the other active listings. So really every week we actually go over that data. And sometimes it's just a casual slight comment that goes in there saying, hey, we seem to be listed a little bit higher than our competition that have more advantages and might be seen as a better property compared to yours, in the buyer's eyes, for example. And most of the time, I actually have my sellers reaching out to me after that email. They call me up and they say, you know what, let's do a price reduction. What number do you think we should go to? And I'm like, perfect. I'm going to send over the document and we're going to just get it signed and do it right now.
And we're going to switch over to Tony for this one. I'm going to combine like 5 different versions of this question I've had submitted to me. But essentially, it's if we're temporarily taking price reductions off the table, what would you do otherwise with like a quote unquote like stale listing that's been lingering on the market? Like, do you change the marketing up? What does that look like if we're not talking price reduction?
Well, one of the things that at least we're pretty lucky to have is I've been doing Google marketing for, I would say, 12 years now. So we've built up a massive database. I've got about 65 to 70,000 people in that database right now. So the first thing that I would do is I would take our listing and I would send it out to everybody in our database, either whether it's a price change or whether it's an upcoming open house or something, just something to stimulate it. The other thing that I would do is we've started to change how we do our descriptions. We almost do like a headline because, if you've got like for us, for example, where we are, like if somebody's got a walkout basement, backs onto a ravine, it's got a swimming pool, there's no need for that information to be buried somewhere deeper in the description. That needs to be upfront. I think more often than not, people are taking the great characteristics of a home and they're burying it and hoping that the buyer finds it in there somewhere. So what we do is we actually revise our description, we bring it to the front, and we talk about, beautiful 2-story home, backs onto the ravine, walkout basement with a swimming pool. Then we get into the house itself because all the rest of it, like the whole house can be rebuilt at Home Depot, but you can't rebuild a ravine. You can't rebuild a walkout basement, and a pool is definitely a bonus. So we definitely look at it from that perspective because we've only got the buyer's attention for 3 or 4 seconds when they're scrolling through. So we want to make sure, is the front image good? And is the front image been there for too long? If it's been there for 30, 60 days, well, every buyer out there has already seen it. So maybe refresh the image. Don't have snow in front of your property when it's like April, May. Like update the photos, update the property description. And if you're still in the same season and it's like still snow outside or whatever, then just switch around your photos a little bit, just to show the buyers optically something different.
So you'll have to check if this is allowed with your MLS, but we tested this with a client for listings and they got more traffic when they did a picture in picture as the first one in MLS. So they do like the exterior, but then they put like a circle and do a high contrast one of the interior right as the first image. So like on realtor.ca, it stands out more because then they get the thumbnail one. That might be worth testing out because we've seen with a client of ours that they got a lot more traffic to theirs.
You know what? I'll definitely check with our board, but some of the shit people are doing out there with the virtual staging, like they're not even virtually staging the house anymore. It's like a virtual renovation. So I mean, if they're letting that stuff slide, then they gotta let this stuff slide.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the actual property, so it works out.
Yeah.
Like Peggy, I'm curious with you as well. Like, how are you looking at like marketing the properties, and is it different than what you would have used to do?
I'm doing exactly what Tony said was bullshit. We cancel and relist all the time.
So do we.
We do that. Yeah, we do that because it refreshes the property, and we obviously at that point will change pictures, we'll descriptors and what have you. But I think the one thing is sometimes people miss is that we're now dealing with AI and Google. So sometimes you need to change how you are like talking about, like Tony said, like if there's a ravine, like if there's all those things, you need to mention them. So then when somebody goes on ChatGPT and asks for a home with a spectacular pool or an amazing ravine or what have you, you're kind of answering the question. So we really need to train ourselves how we write these descriptors and change them up all the time. So Google does pick them up, but then AI also picks them up. So you got to prove to your client that you're working. And at some point, when they see you working this hard, price won't be off the table.
And I'm curious, just based on your AI comment, like, are you tracking more people either booking showings or reaching out because of AI? Like, I've seen that for my business where like we've been recommended. Are you seeing it for yours as well?
Yeah, and that's what, yeah, I think everybody should check on AI and see where they fall. And the one great thing about AI is they do quote their sources. So wherever they're finding their sources is where you should be, and you should make more of an effort to appear there, right? So things for AI that we use, it would be like, when Alex was talking about the email she sends out and, getting all the properties and what sold, what didn't. I would ask AI for that and have that all done, like that kind of stuff, like just administratively, where it opens up more of your time to communicate to your client directly.
And we'll go over to Alex for another question, then we'll go through this with everyone. Have you changed or added any marketing to your business since the market shifted?
To be honest, not completely. I think ultimately it depends on like how we're priced in the marketplace and what the market activity is at the end of the day. Like we have done like, you kind of follow the trends of what's also happening. Like we do add some more social posts and videos and whatnot as well. But is a property video going to sell the property? In my opinion, no. I think it's going to appease the seller and make them happy with the service and the cost that they're paying to you once ultimately your home sells. So I think that doing these things is beneficial, but ultimately it's not going to necessarily sell the house. And I think like if there's a listing that's sitting, the question really comes down to is like, are they sitting because of that excessive inventory or competition, or maybe that lack of demand, or could it actually be something around the house, maybe a lack of maintenance, poor visual appeal, and so on? Because if it's the latter, then I would definitely say we need to get those things fixed because that's a huge deterrent for buyers.
I'm curious, Sandra, like, have you made any changes? I would have guessed with your business before, maybe you would have made more changes with the COVID market. So have you
Yeah.
like had gone back to things you used to do, or what does that look like for you?
So I'm all about shiny new objects for my business. So I'm constantly looking at that. But if I, as an example, we were talking about product becoming stale. I had about 90% of my clients, I told them, come off the market in December. We don't need to be there. Now, I know some agents would disagree with that, but there were only, in all of Halifax, there were a little over 5,000 showings that would have happened during December. And why disrupt your Christmas? So when I looked at the stack, I keep an Excel spreadsheet since 2021 on my laptop. And when I looked at the showings that happened in January, February, March, and how the market was trending. January the 29th was the date that when I was doing stuff in Perplexity that came up that I should relist my product. And here we have a great website that's our competitor. And I would say 90% of the market would go to that website. And as soon as you relist or you do a price change, it goes right back up to the top again where the consumer sees it. So in regards to marketing, yeah, I take listings off. And, before we take them off, we have the contract ready to go again. But I think the only thing during COVID that would have given me sanity was that every home that we listed, I had a custom website. All the documents were there, and I didn't have to have someone else's client call me looking for information. But no, I'm a moving target every week for my marketing.
And then, Tony, there was a question that will kind of combine into the same one of like, if you changed in your marketing, but there were some questions in the comments around like, because I think you're the only one here who does the Your Home Sold Guaranteed program. So how, like, have you had to adjust that? So it's kind of two, like, what have you changed in your marketing, and has that had any changes with the change in the market as well?
When it comes to the Your Home Sold Guaranteed, no, we haven't changed the parameters. I mean, if we stick to our parameters, then there's always built-in kind of There's built-in insurance. There's built-in safety. The only time where there's an issue is when we digress from our own rules. And I think I saw one of the questions there, Tony, did you have to buy any houses in 2025 from the guaranteed sale? And here, yeah, honestly, I had to buy one. And I didn't want it, but I mean, I'm stuck with it. I still have it, using it as a rental property now. But yeah, I had to buy one. But as far as changing the marketing to adjust to the market, no, we haven't changed. The marketing is not broken. There's nothing wrong with the marketing. Just like the marketing worked terrifically during COVID. So then all of a sudden, were we heroes with our marketing during COVID when we were getting 300,000-400,000 above the asking price? No, we just priced it right to get that number. And it's the same thing now. Our marketing's not broken. It's just we got to price it right to get it sold.
Curious, like Peggy as well. Have you done any changes to your marketing since the market's changed?
God, we change shit here on a daily basis. Like, if you want to exist in this business, like, you have to bump up your marketing. But I agree with Tony. It's still all about price, right? And I think the frequency in which, when you're, and that's the problem when you're carrying so many listings, you really need to be organized as far as who's getting what and how they're being marketed, and the frequency needs to dial up in order to appease our sellers, because at the end of the day, chances are that that's what we're doing this for.
Yeah. And I want to do a rapid fire around everyone. If one like marketing thing went away in your business, which would have the biggest impact on getting clients? Does anyone want to, if you might need to, does anyone want to start with it? But like, what's one thing if they took it out of your business would have the biggest impact on getting new clients?
MLS.
All right, we'll take MLS off the table.
Okay. Damn.
You said new clients, right?
Yeah. So like not your database. So if we're looking like, for example, Google ads, Facebook ads, billboards, radio, like what would be if someone took it out of what you're marketing? What would have the biggest impact on your business?
It's not billboards.
No, it's definitely not billboards. I would, so let me just kind of split this in two. When we're talking database, we have two different databases. We have our past clients, and then we have leads that we've generated over the course of time. I would say that we get more from our 65,000 people in our database that is technically new business because they come in, they register, we've never transacted them. So this is a separate database from the people from our past clients. But we actually get a lot of business from leads that we've generated, nurtured them to a certain point, and now we get them to the point of either listing or buying or something. So that would definitely hurt if that left our business.
Anyone else want to jump in with something that would be taken away that would hurt? Sandra?
For me, it would be organic SEO and definitely now GEO, because that's been playing a big part of my business now, more so than SEO. I would hate to lose that. Yeah.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, Geo is basically ranking on AI, and it's generative engine optimization is what they refer to it. That's ranking on AI for those. And then we actually have a lot of questions here, kind of around social media. But before we get into that, how many of you have found a return from your organic social media efforts? We'll start with Alex. We haven't talked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really do paid ads and whatnot on social. It's all organic. So I mean, I've definitely seen a benefit just from being organic, raw, real, and the people you're connected with.
Yeah. Have you, Peggy? Like, are you seeing a return on your organic social?
Yes, definitely. And it's probably better quality than the stuff you're going to get on PPC, because it's people that have connected with your vibe and your brand and you. So those are people easier to convert.
Yeah. And how about, I know, Sandra, you do quite a bit on social as well, right?
So I would say I used to do videos all the time, and I started them back in 2014, and I probably 2014 or 2018, I stopped doing like, hey, welcome to 123 Street. And I focus more now on blogging. And if I am doing a podcast, it's about the market. But if when I get someone, I go to someone's house, oh, I seen your video when you were talking about, X, or I did a blog, totally organic. It was about our property taxes. So in a city of 500,000, I had 104,000 views of this article on Facebook that I posted. I ended up getting a meeting with the mayor and a global TV spot, talking about I rely more on the pen, I guess, more so than I do on, Instagram or it's all about writing for me and that particular type of content, which is good.
How about you, Tony? How's your results from organic social?
It's I'm not going to say we're getting a return from it, to be perfectly honest. It becomes difficult to quantify when people call in and they're like, we see you everywhere. So maybe it's part of it has to do with an omnipresence or overall brand package. Very difficult to quantify, difficult to track, at least in our business. So I'm going to say we're not getting a return.
Yeah. And we do have a follow-up for you specifically while we're on you, which is what type of ads are you doing through Google?
For me?
Yeah, that was a question someone specifically had for you.
Yeah, I mean, most of the ads that we're running is move up buyer ads. Like, for example, we're not running straight up home evaluation ads. We've done that in the past, and to be honest, we're not getting we'd never got a great return on those. The ones that we find do the best for us are, people who are searching for their next home and then they just happen to have a house to sell. So those are the ads that we're running.
And then we have a question here, which is like a scenario, and we'll start with Peggy. Maybe everyone, if you want to add anything to it as well, which is how do you deal with a buyer agent who pitches an offer price based on the amount their buyer wants to spend on renovations? They find it frustrating to deal with buyer agents who don't bother or are afraid to educate their buyers about comparables and fair offer prices rather than just looking for blood in the water when making offers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in all fairness, buyers agents have waited a really long time to be the kingpins, right? So we got to kind of suck it up. But if it's that important to you, like if there's something like ridiculous about it, write it in the offer. Say, Schedule C. Here are my comparables. Like if you have a leg to stand on, or I wish we could still present in person because so many more deals could be had if we were still permitted to sit at an offer table, because we can't get our point across. So honestly, like I would put it in a schedule. I would put it part of Schedule A.
And are you finding that like the buyers aren't willing to present or more sellers aren't doing presentations anymore?
It's really hard. Like we're spoiled too, right? Like we've got DocuSigns, and as realtors, like we're trying to use our time efficiently. Do we really feel like going to our client's house and setting up, to present an offer? Maybe, just saying maybe, if this market gets even tougher, that will change too.
And then we have a few more questions here because I want to make sure we're getting to as many as we can before we wrap up. Hold on, let's pull in through here. What is the price? What if the price you were suggesting is still not selling, and now they are kind of blaming you for not selling, even if the price is changed as desired by you? Sandra, how do you handle that if they're blaming you for that process?
Actually, I just went through that, but it wasn't a blame, and I believed in the price that we had. And when I was getting the feedback, it was, one of the questions that we use from Showing Time, I made up my own, is that do you think we are appropriately priced comparing to what everything else you were seeing? And so the feedback to me about our price was making no sense. But then when I really dug into it, the buyer for our market wasn't just looking, as an example, in Clayton Park. They were going to, Spryfield, Clayton Park, Bedford, Sackville, like in the GTA. Maybe they would go from Whitby, Oshawa to wherever and look at the price. So It was really having a conversation. I'm like, hey, they're not just comparing our house because there was nothing else for sale in that particular area. It was all over. And so it's just understanding that. And it was easy for me to get the price point when I was able to understand the feedback and look at it and thinking, okay, this is what's making sense now because it just wasn't for my particular area.
We have a question here, which is from anonymous attendee. We'll start with Alex and go around again. Other than relying on your client base, how are you getting listings right now?
Yeah, so we have a variety of ways to get listings. I mean, about 40% of my business is actually agent to agent referrals. So there are quite a number of listings that come out of that. So that's a huge percentage there. Of course, your database repeat and referral is quite substantial, of course. We also have a strategic alliance with a or property management company, which we happen to have ownership of as well. So, of course, any of those rental owners who want to get out of the rental market and stop being landlords, we're typically their first call. So that's, I would say, our other main listing generator.
Yeah. How about you, Peggy? What's your outside of your database? What's your number one source of listings right now?
I would probably say between, so there's a few things I guess advertising is what our source of business is, whether it be radio, TV, what have you. But that's what I would say would be our number one outside of, and referrals, repeat clients, like those are our focus. We do a lot of client events. We do, we try and stay in touch with our database. But yeah, I would say that between radio, TV, and past clients, we do okay.
And just as a quick follow, like what did you found as like an effective messaging for your radio and TV ads to drive calls?
The honesty, like educating people on what the market's really like, being honest with them. I went on TV last week and I said, if this is your last home, don't put it up for sale. And I'm being very sincere and honest. Like you've got to be honest with people. They get enough bullshit from the outside world. They're just looking for somebody to be straight with them. And the ones that don't want to hear that message, they're not really my clients anyway. So you can eliminate a lot of people too.
Yeah. And then how about you, Tony? Like where are you mostly getting listings from outside of your database?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate, just like like Peggy said, we've got advertising, a lot of brand kind of awareness around town.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're that second call in, because the first call is always a family friend. And then when that doesn't work out, then there's a bit more due diligence, there's a bit more research involved, and they're like, okay, what's the name that kind of shows up? And thankfully, we're one of the names that come to people's mind right away. But yeah, referrals too. I mean, I'm 20 years in this industry this year as well. So there's a ton of past clients that kind of show up from there. Google has also been effective too, but like I said, that's basically the move up buyers. So the way that we get listings is because people inquire on their next house and they just happen to have a house to sell.
And how about you, Sandra?
Well, I don't, I do paid advertising, but no one's ever called me like, hey, I seen your billboard, but they will tell me that they seen my billboard because I'm usually pretty cheeky on them. I've been very fortunate to get business from agents, but I'll sit down in November and I have 300 blogs to go for the following year. Every Monday, I write a blog. And if there's anything else happening in the city, I write another blog. So it's a lot of grunt work for me to be found online, and that's really how I'm getting the business apart from database and agents. It's I saw you online. And my past two clients found me through AI.
Sarah Saladin would like you to define cheeky, Sandra.
Peggy would too. Tell us.
Well, so my husband is pretty saucy, and I'll have, if I can negotiate with him, I can do anything. Or if I can, convince him not to wear socks, I can sell your listing. And then then I had this gesture head on, and I'm like, you want cute, scroll Instagram. You want soul, call me.
I
Um,
love it.
so I'm okay to be,
You're
I'm okay
awesome.
to be, thank you. I don't think other agents would think that. Oh, and I also did the other one, top number one agent in Halifax, survey. Mom was the only one surveyed. I'm sure you would have seen that one, but I don't always have to look perfect in an ad, and I really like showing just my personality. And I'm a Newfoundlander, so we're pretty saucy anyway, as it is.
Sarah says she had one at the beer store that said, "Want a cottage to go with that beer." I like that one. So
That's good.
we still have a lot of questions coming in. I know I kind of asked you guys to commit to an hour. But if any of you have to drop off, feel free. I'm not going to hold you in, but if you're okay to stay for a couple of minutes, we do have some more questions coming in. So we have some here. How do AVMs play into your your client's pricing expectations? So for those just in the audience, if you're not familiar, AVMs, automated valuation models, so the automated listing ones. So maybe we'll start with you, Tony. Like, have you found that that has an impact with your clients when they come in with the price they expect?
Not really. No, we don't run into it too much at all. I mean, we come in with enough data that we actually sit there and go through it. It's the one thing that I'm really surprised about is the number of realtors that sit down and meet with a client and they don't go over comparables. And they just basically just tell them this is what the house is worth. I mean, when we go there, myself, my team, we always go there with the purpose to educate, is to show them that, this is legitimately what's happening. And we support all of our pricing with rationale. So if another agent goes in and gives them a higher price, then we always ask them, did the agent support it with data? Or is it just something that they just sat there and told you? So, I mean, yesterday I went to a CMA, a listing, and it was a good property. It was like a $1.5 million property, which is kind of double the price of our average. So it was a good property, and the client openly told me that he had interviewed agents in the past, and he said two of the agents actually just said to him, one said to him, I'm going to get back to you on the price. And the other agent said, what is it that you want for the house? And so, you know, he basically he discredited those agents right away because he shouldn't be setting his own price, and he had the wherewithal, the intelligence to be able to know that. And the other agent basically the next day followed up with comparables that just weren't even comparable. And more often than not, I think sellers have a great idea of what their home is worth. Sometimes, they're out to lunch as well. But there's enough data out there for sellers to be able to kind of draw their own conclusions as to roughly what their home is worth. Sometimes you got to talk them off a little bit, but I think they're in the ballpark. So, yeah.
Has anyone had any clients where like the AVM's been an issue or sticking point for them?
Sometimes, where in cases like that, if they don't want to, like if they don't agree with our number, but they still like us and want to work with us, for example, then we actually may suggest they get a professional appraisal done, and that will give a true evaluation, and then we go from there. Like we have a number of relocation companies that we work with, and the way that they do evaluations as well is they get two appraisals, and if it's within that 3 to 5% of each other, then they'll do the average, and that's the price that they'll give to their client or their relocating person. Now, if it's a wider range, then they get a third one, and then they do a ratio of that as well. So really, that appraisal is what many companies and what will give you that ultimate valuation as well.
And Peggy, I'm sure you have to potentially deal with this a lot, like training your team because you have quite a few that are out there. How are you handling the discussions around all the noise out there in social media and the news, like the doom and gloom that's out there? Maybe like how do we best convince our clients that that's not necessarily true, or just how to navigate kind of the negativity that a lot of them would have seen about the market out there?
Well, in a little bit of way. First, I'll answer your AVM question because we do have
Yep.
that on our website and we're always promoting it. But as soon as an AVM goes out, we also send out a video that says this number could be out to lunch. Like this is because people want immediate answers right now. We're living in that kind of world. But please, we haven't seen your home. We haven't, we don't know all the details of it. So don't take this to heart. Someone will be in touch. So we use it, but we also send it a video letting people know that it could be out to complete lunch. And then, sorry, what was the other question? I forgot already.
Basically, how are you handling discussions with kind of clients, consumers, with like all the doom and gloom that's in the news about the real estate
Right.
market?
And that's they've done us a favor, really, because when this downturn started, the news cycles hadn't caught up to it. So we were the first ones taking the hits. We would go in and talk to clients and say, no, it's not a seller's market anymore. Where have you been? Have you not watching the news? But now, like, honestly, they've done us a favor because they're the ones taking the brunt of it, like the news cycles, right? So at least our clients are more educated now than they used to be. And at least they're able to, I mean, they already know. They know that the real estate market is down. So in a way, you can use it to your favor, but you just have to be honest. You have to be honest, and you have to be honest to the fact that every area is different. Like, we live in Ontario, who everybody says is a complete buyer's market. Well, go to Sudbury. They're doing multiples, and it's a seller's market. So it's completely different. There's areas in Simcoe County that are completely different than others. So you just need them to focus on what's actually happening and give them enough information.
And we do have a lot of other questions that I think kind of have been answered at different parts. Maybe people were joining late. So like we'll include those ones, and like we're going to send out the recording tomorrow morning. So if you're watching the recording, today's January 28th. It's going to go out January 29th for everybody. But I really appreciate you guys all joining out. Just for anyone, if they're interested in, reaching out to you, whether it's for a referral or something else, how would they get a hold of you? We'll start with Sandra.
Well, on Instagram, I am dealsandheels.halifaxrealtor or my website. And you know what? I'm getting my Shoppers Drug Mart discount now, and I'm wearing more flats than I am heels. I think only us old ladies understand that. Or just come to my website, sandrapike.ca.
How about you, Tony?
If it's Instagram, Tony Johal Real Estate Team, or if it's an email, tony@tonyjohal.com.
Yeah. And Alex?
So my Instagram is just my full name. It's Alex Hripko, Hripko, all one word. And then you can email me, alex@teamhripko.ca.
And Peggy?
I'm Peggy at peggyhill.com. I don't know what my Instagram is. I think it's Peggy Hill Team. You'll find it. And we love referrals, and we service all of Simcoe County, far, far north. We will go to Huntsville. We will go to Gravenhurst. But I won't go to Kitchener, Waterloo.
So that was one of the questions. Can you please all remind us of your areas? So we have Sandra in Halifax, Alex in Calgary, Tony, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Peggy Hill, Barrie, and Simcoe County. So again, thank you everyone for coming. So we're going to do the REM Mastermind every month. We're going to bring in kind of new people every month. Next month is on creating a consistent pipeline. So it's not just generating new leads. It's just how are you keeping your pipeline full? That could be working your database. So if there's people you would like to hear from on that topic, you can either reply to the email, you can message me. I'm the only one with my name, so any account you find with Angel Fogliato, that is me. But let us know who you'd like to hear from. We will verify production because we're not bringing on people who look like realtors but do no deals. Our focus is on people who are actually in the trenches getting things done. So we really appreciate you coming. And again, big thank you to Remax, who have sponsored for the entire year. They jumped in both feet right away. So big thank you to Remax for making this happen, because it's keeping it free, because there was talks of doing this as like a paid thing, and Remax said we'll pay for the whole year. So big shout out to them for helping out here. But again, thank you so much to the four of you. I'll send you guys a follow-up email as well.
Thank you, guys.
But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for
Take
joining.
care. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.